The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome. This is Melissa Wires at Every Action. Today we're going to talk about shopping for a cause, selecting the best tools for your nonprofit. I am with Kate Wiley, who has just recently shopped for a new system, and she's going to be our expert on that today. Just brief introductions here. I'm the executive director at Every Action. My background is kind of where fundraising and technology comes together. For a number of years, I was the director of development at several nonprofit organizations, including Common Cause and the U.S. Committee for Refugees. Then I was on the consulting side for a few years. I worked for Craver Matthews Smith. Then I went to an early technology company, CTSG, that got bought by Kintera, that got bought by Blackbaud, and I didn't want to be bought anymore. So I ran my own company called Breakthrough Strategies that did marketing, fundraising, and communications for about 10 years. And I've been with Every Action now for 3 years. And I'm one of those lucky people. I have a really terrific job in that I get to build the tools that I wanted to use when I was in the position that a lot of you folks are. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about what is it that you should want in a CRM? What are some of your options out there? And then Kate, who I'm going to let her introduce herself, is going to talk about somebody who's just gone through this experience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Wiley, and I'm the Marketing and Communication Manager at SOME, So Others Might Eat, which is a human services nonprofit here in Washington, D.C. We're fairly large. We have about 400 employees, and we offer comprehensive services to residents of D.C. who are experiencing homelessness or poverty. So we offer a range of services from any basic needs like getting a hot meal every day or getting clothing to healthcare, addictions treatment, job training, and especially affordable housing. And in my role, I am on our development team. And so while I have my communication functions, which is our email marketing, I'm our webmaster, things like that, I also am responsible for our online giving, which brings in almost $3 million each year.
And Kate and SOME are among our newest clients here at Every Action. They just launched their digital program in the beginning of May and are finishing up implementing their development program. So we thought Kate brought great expertise, having just very recently gone through this process. So a little bit of housekeeping as we get started. Please make sure that you are in listen-only mode. It makes everybody crazy if there's sounds in the background, so just put yourself in listen-only now. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Use the hashtag #BestNonprofitTools. We welcome your thoughts, especially if you are either in the process now of looking for a new CRM or you've just completed this process. I think everybody will be interested in your experiences. The other thing is we want this to be a bit of a conversation. Kate and I are going to start the conversation, but then we want you guys to join in. So please feel free to put your questions in the GoToWebinar chat box. And as we're going through, we'll save a lot of the questions for the end, but things that are relevant as we go, we'll also hit those. So I think that's it for housekeeping. So I think maybe we'll just kind of start talking a little bit about, what are the tools that nonprofits need? I know I talk to a lot of people and they just feel kind of overwhelmed by the process. There's a lot of choices. Sometimes they know a lot about the technology and sometimes they don't. And a couple of things that just when I'm asked, I kind of give as a guidance. I think, the two things to start with is take a little bit of an inventory, but an inventory in the sense of what is your biggest programs and how would technology help those programs. I really believe that your tools, your technology should work for you rather than you working for your tools, which I felt like I spent much of my life working for tools. And so I think part of going hand in hand with that is to really figure out what programs are going to most use the technology that you're going to buy. So particularly if you're a fundraiser, not only the fundraising programs that you're doing, but also where's most of your money coming in and how is that gonna fit in? I think similarly for digital or advocacy programs, what are those big goals? And then a little bit think, where do we want to be 3 years and 5 years out, and try to kind of bridge those spaces. I don't know, Kate, how did you get started in this process?
Yeah, so I'll be very honest and admit that this process started very selfishly and that I needed to make my day-to-day better. But it really was a very introspective, analytical look at ourselves, at our programs, what we're doing, what our needs were. And I think, like you said, it was that I think we wanted to solve a lot of problems we were having right now, but how did we look ahead and make sure we were future-proofing ourselves for where we might want to be 5 years down the road? Right now we have about 8 people on our team, but we're looking to expand. So what does our program look like in 5 years? What are our fundraising needs going to be down the line? And how might we want to be bringing in other departments around the organization for it? So it was, again, a lot of talking amongst ourselves and trying to figure out, what are we doing now? How are we doing it? And how could we be doing it better? So for us, we were looking at the fundraising, at digital marketing, events, and volunteering. We do some advocacy, but we decided that was not a priority for this system right now.
And how long was kind of that planning, thinking process?
Yeah, so we've just transitioned over to Every Action, but I think we really started this process about a year ago. That's sort of when I, again, was like, I need to fix my day to day, and then slowly started probably complaining to my coworkers about, like, this is really frustrating for me, and hearing their frustrations. And so then that's when we decided that, if this is a problem for so many of us, then we really needed to take a look at it. So we spent probably 6 months really just talking amongst ourselves and trying to figure out what our next steps might be. And then we brought in a consultant to help us really figure out what those business requirements would be for a new system. And then we went out and started looking.
So that's interesting. You kind of internally kind of organized what your needs were, and then you brought in a consultant to kind of match your needs with the technology that was out there, as opposed to have a consultant come in to help you define your needs.
Yeah, and I think part of that was not being super technologically savvy ourselves. And so, I think a lot of nonprofits, you make it work, right? It's not, you're not thinking about how do we invest in our own processes. It's just, this is the workaround. Here's the 3 things I need to do because this makes my life easier. And I just need to get to the next thing. I need to talk to the next donor. I need to get that next appeal out. So I think that was kind of a switch we needed to make internally, that, no, like, this isn't working for us. How do we make it better? That's really going to make it better, not just going to make it work.
Right. I think it's also interesting that you kind of went through your pain points.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of consensus on that, or did different people have really different things?
I think people had different things, but where we all came together was just that there were so many processes that had to be incredibly manual and time consuming. And I think the realization that maybe it could be different, and the idea of, like, what could we do with that time that we're saving was a real big motivator to then push the project forward to the point where we brought in a consultant.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting when you go through this process. To me, I'm always, when I talk to clients, it's like, at the end of the day, what is it that you want to do here? Okay, so you want to get an email out ultimately, and so let's focus on how to do that most efficiently and fairly, and not, get all lost in, right now it's a 10-step process or whatnot. So that's good. Yeah. So just to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on kind of your process. So how did you, in terms of putting people's pain points together, and what did you have meetings? Did you do one-on-ones?
It was a mixture of both. I think we started out with some big team meetings where it was just, let's feel this out. What are we thinking? How is our day going? And then we met with the much smaller groups and did some one-on-ones with just, like, walk me through your day. Like, what's the worst part of your job? Like, what's the best part of your job? But, what is it that, like, if you could really fix that, it would make a big difference, both in your quality of life and in your quality of work. So I think there was a mixture of that. And then eventually we really had people document those processes. Some people used our current systems more than others. Some were still using Excel sheets and Outlook reminders. So it was really getting everyone to really, I think, slow down, take a deep look at what they were actually doing and how they were getting it done, and then documenting that so we could take a look at that all together. And I think there was a lot of personal, like, realizations of, like, oh yeah, that is not an ideal process. Like, and then the question was, okay, this is how we're doing it. Is there a better way? And that's when I think that was when it was helpful to bring in a consultant who, that's what they do. They're familiar with these
How did you find your consultant?
So we had, they had actually worked with another program of ours, a service providing program, and helping them identify a database going forward. So we were like, oh, that seems like a really good idea. They
That's
were
what we
really
need.
helpful. Just that, me Googling CRMs and asking friends around at other organizations, like, what do you use? What do you use? Which was helpful and great. We got, good recommendations. But at the end of the day, I think we wanted to bring in someone with that expertise to tell us, like, your dreams are possible. Like, we can fix this. And I think, too, there was also that bit of, it was nice to hear from outsiders that, like, yes, this is not a great process. Like, this can be better. It's not like a pie in the sky dream that you could make it better.
And you felt like working with a consultant was a good investment for you guys. You would recommend that?
Absolutely. Generally. I thought that was really helpful. Again, I was coming at it with really little experience with other CRMs. We had only been using the one we'd been using for a while. So I think there was that. I also, as we all know, at nonprofits, we're busy. We wear a lot of different hats. It was nice to have someone out there who could do that research, who could compile all of these things down, and I think, distill them into, 4 people are all really saying the same thing, and this is that one requirement that we need to meet, rather than just us kind of, I think we were, throwing things out at the wall, like, here's what's bothering me, here's what's bothering me. And then I think the other important thing is, it's very easy to get, I think, really myopic in that, like, this is what I need to fix now.
Right.
But to bring out that, like, okay, and how would you like to do that? Or here are the possibilities that could exist with a new system.
Mm-hmm. And then to what degree and then how did you get buy-in from senior management, the board, or any other outside players?
Yeah, so I think the first people we had to kind of bring on board was our chief development officer, my boss. And fortunately, I think she was pretty easy to bring on board. I think
that's good.
She uses the systems. I think she could see, like, right, this isn't working. I think especially having those team meetings where people were talking about, like, this is how much time I spend pulling tax receipts for people. Like, that end of the year, we're taking 2 weeks and having to send those out manually. I think hearing those things and kind of all in the same room all at once became kind of this overwhelming realization, like, yes, it needs to be better. I think realizing, like, kind of looking at it just from, we're fundraisers, we need to bring in money. How can we bring in more money more efficiently? And looking at just the data we didn't have and what it didn't allow us to do. So we weren't able to really segment very well. We just didn't have the data. Our tools were not connecting. So we just couldn't have that 360-degree view of who a donor was. And so it made it very hard to really target people with good asks. So that kind of financial argument worked really well. And that's also how we were kind of able to bring in our financing team. We were also able to talk about how reporting could get better. So I think for us, it was really looking at, like, the possibilities of how a new system could really propel us forward.
Yeah, and I think that's so smart. And I think sometimes I get a lot of questions with, like, oh, I don't know if this is in the budget and this and that. And I think people miss the opportunity to say, but hey, if we had a better system that was more efficient and saved us time and did these things, here's how much more money we would raise as well as save.
Right. And we did I pulled a lot of numbers and a lot of our budgets, past, present, and future, and just sort of, this is what we're spending now on a system that's subpar, and, like, on extra consultants to help make it work for us. If we could get something that has easy, like, good looking forms out of the box, we don't need to have this budget for consultants. Right. So, what are we looking at the savings? Maybe it's going to be a big upfront purchase, right? But that the next couple of years, these are the savings that we should see.
Yeah, and I think you bring up another really good point. Really look at the whole cost of the system that you're currently using, and then what you're thinking about moving to. And so not just what you write every month or every year to the vendor that provides your software, but what kind of staffing do you have to have for that particular tool? Are you going to need a dedicated database person, for instance, and how much is that going to cost? And are you going to need consultants? Are you going to need extra design work because nothing looks good, or anything else, and kind of get that full amount together, because that really is your real cost.
Yeah, and I think, again, we were smartly able to look at that staff time and those efficiencies. Again, we're all busy professionals, and there are times where we've had to bring in temp help to get through busy season. I think looking at like, okay, if some of these processes can be automated, that frees up the staff time, and we have like, so thinking about those resources, not just, the financial ones, but how people, what you have on staff. And again, I think you can't discount just like people's satisfaction with their jobs and their day-to-day existence.
Staff retention.
And people, aren't, trying to leave right before we get to tax season to avoid having to send out
pull them manually. Yeah. And that seemed like that was kind of one of the important features that you were really looking for, is automation where possible, and just a easier to use, more efficient system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were using 2 parallel systems, and so the biggest thing was we wanted them to just be as seamlessly integrated as possible.
Did you have any other stakeholders in the process that you had to bring on board besides kind of your team and the finance people? And
I think those were the main ones. We did have to, our senior leadership had to okay the purchase, but I think that, we were able to make good presentation to our boss, who then passed that on. And I think it was really became that this is something we need to do for the health of the organization. And again, looking forward at, what our growth as an organization would be and what we have to fund. And so that we were able to make that case that it was worth it to make that investment.
And your organization has just been growing a lot in every way in the last few years.
Yeah, we've been growing exponentially. We've been adding new programs all the time. So we're seeing that the responsibility of the fundraising department is, growing in kind. So we need to
bigger job, better tools. They go hand in hand. In terms of doing that. And then, so now you're in this process. You ultimately RFP'd.
Yes. So we started off, again, we really wanted to do, I think the technical term was a market scan, just to get, again, we were kind of starting from a really low knowledge point, like what is out there? What are we missing? What are the possibilities? So we started with a market scan and brought in several vendors for demos, which was really helpful. And I think really got the wheels turning as to, again, the possibilities, not just the fixes. And then we did an RFP and sent that out and brought in, again, 3 more vendors for demos.
And what's your thought? One of the questions I get from folks, and there's 2 ways to do it. It's kind of like you say with the market scan, we want to see everything that's out there, which is kind of a lot these days. And then other folks say, we have some idea what our needs are. We want to go more targeted because it takes a lot of time to see everything. Where did you come down in kind of that mix?
Yeah, I think that's where our consultants were incredibly helpful. Again, we spent a couple months really building out those business requirements, like what are our must-haves? Like it absolutely has to do X, Y, and Z because that's what our program is now. And so once we developed that, they were able to, based on their knowledge, kind of come up with that list. I think we only sent out to 5 vendors, and then I think 3 responded, and that's who we brought in to do demos. But I think at a certain point there's too many options and it gets really overwhelming, and especially to kind of really be able to dig in and tell like this is the right system. I think they would all start mixing after a while. I think even with 3, it was really like, wait, who is this person? Like we really had to catch everyone immediately after, be like, what are your thoughts? So that we weren't confusing.
Right. And then kind of how did you prioritize those needs, especially amongst different people? And
yeah, I think that was hard because again, I've been sort of spearheading this and I'm selfish and I wanted to make my life better first. But I think when we were able to work through that as a team and really come at like that certain things were really non-negotiable, like the really seamless integration, that was going to help everyone, that any of our other goals for the system wouldn't happen if we were still spending time manually pushing things back and forth. So we definitely did prioritize. I think,
were those hard discussions or did they kind of just come together?
I think they flowed pretty naturally for us. I think we're probably fortunate in that sense. We are, maybe some people think 8 is a big team. We seem pretty cohesive and tight knit to us, I think. So I really think we were able to easily come at, that this is going to help all of us. And then there were certain, things like I'm really our digital person. So I'm like, okay, I can figure out how I'm going to look at the email and make sure this works for me. But as if the whole system didn't work as a whole for anyone. It's not going to be like, well, we have to have this because I like their emails.
Right.
Same thing with, some of our smaller teams are like, well, we can make anything work as long as it works for kind of the real bulk of it.
A couple of things we got to have, but then we're good with
Right.
whatever else.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit. So you moved from a couple of different systems into Every Action, a single system now, which I think is a great idea. But
yes, we think so too.
But talk a little bit. Was your team apprehensive about that? Was everybody excited about that? Both?
Yeah, I think both. I think it's still there. We're still kind of learning the system, so there's that learning curve. So it's different, but I think people are really excited. I think we're already able to see the efficiencies and just how much better it is. But I think really we've been very frustrated with where we've been at. I think we want to be doing bigger and better things. So again, like I spoke about, we didn't have a good view of who our donors were. We didn't know that, if they were a donor, we didn't necessarily know that they were also a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know if they were giving online, but are they also sending in a yearly check at the end of the year, but also, donate to our school uniform drive, which is online. So we just didn't know, and trying to figure that out was maybe not impossible, but so arduous and time consuming, it just wasn't worth doing it. So I think everyone was, there's always a little apprehension with change, but I think mostly we were excited to get those efficiencies and to be able to do our jobs better.
Right. And then once you had it down to kind of those three possibilities, then, without giving away any, backroom secrets or anything, but how did you know Every Action was the one that really was right for you?
Yeah. So we had great consultants, and they put together, basically what I did was we had the RFP, which laid out all of our business requirements, and I just had them in an Excel sheet, and I had them all down the side, and I had our 3 vendors that we brought in at the top and just checked them off. Yes, this has it. Yes, this has it. Yes, with a caveat that X, Y, and Z, or no, but we're planning on adding this feature, so that we could kind of look at that. And so we evaluated it based on, do they meet our business criteria? Obviously, price is going to be a factor. We're a nonprofit. We don't have unlimited resources, and we want to be good stewards of that which we have. And then I think it was, there's sort of those little things like, are we paying per user? Can we have as many users as we want? Are we close to a cap of how many records we have? And so if we grow even just a little bit, are we into a new price bracket? What are we looking at there? And then there's, I think, that intangible of we were really looking for a partner, not just a vendor. So, and that I think is just kind of a feeling, and you have conversations and getting the right people in the room. But I think that was sort of that intangible that we were looking for, to make sure that we felt like we had a strong partner going forward. Again, just through implementation, but also beyond implementation.
Right.
Yeah, it's great.
So beyond kind of, was it fairly unanimous, or did you have to have a lot of conversations?
I think it was fairly unanimous.
That makes it easier, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think we kind of came at it as all of these would be fine, right? All of these would do the job, just certain ones were better at certain things. I think for us, really what it came down to, well, there's a lot of factors, but really that Every Action is just that one back end, and that it was so seamless, and that with other systems, while it was very seamless, there was still a bit of manual effort. And so I think if we were going to make a switch, let's do the thing.
Right.
Let's really make it as seamless as we can get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you made the decision now. Talk a little bit about the next steps. Usually I find that's where people really get apprehensive, is now we're gonna do this. We're gonna implement it.
We signed the contract. We made the decision.
And I'll just add for you guys, you had a really quick timeline, because you had a contract on another vendor that was ending sooner than we would have all hoped for.
So we had, I think, 6 weeks to just make the switch before we were going to get
say
booted.
That again. How many weeks?
6.
6 weeks. You can do it in 6 weeks.
6 weeks. It was a little terrifying, I will be honest, but I will here give a shout out to Amanda and Amy, who are our awesome Every Action team, who I think really made it super, I won't say easy on us, but understandable and digestible, and they made it happen.
Yeah.
So it was
the other thing, I'll give a shout out to you. You were super organized and really kept the calendar and kept it on time, which is how you do a 6-week implementation.
Yeah, and I think having that deadline, like this was what I worked on. So, which was great. And I had that buy-in from my boss that like, this is a priority. This is the priority in addition to the other 3 priorities I had, but this was the main one. And so I had my team member, Crystal, shout out also to Crystal, who, this was what we've done for the past 6 weeks. I was working on my previously scheduled vacation. Like we got it done.
Oh, no.
But so I think the steps were sort of I think the most maybe surprising step for me in the implementation was that there was still more kind of discovery to be done. I think because we've been talking about it for so long, I'm like, I don't know if there's more insight here. Like, I don't know what more we can discover about our processes, but there was more to discover and really, again, walk through like who is doing what, like writing down those tasks. And I think we were always just like, oh, I didn't know that Emily did that. Like, okay. Or that this is
you
something.
learned a lot about the organization.
Oh, I absolutely learned so much about our organization and our team through this process. So I think it was that kind of final bit of discovery, and then really kind of having to think through, especially because we had such a hard deadline, like what information do I need to pull out of that old system, working on that, and then working with Amanda and Amy to move that over. And again, I think we learned a lot through that process. But I think what was super helpful from them was it was really these digestible chunks, like, okay, we need this and we need this then. It's like, okay. So it was a big project, but we were able to look at it in small little chunks that made it less overwhelming than it was with that really looming deadline.
Then how did you handle training for your team?
Sure. Yeah. So what is great too, I think, about the platform is it is pretty intuitive. It's what I liked about it too is I think the vocabulary makes sense to me.
Oh, yay. That's what we tried.
Yeah. I think it's like, I'm not trying to figure out like what this in the system means in real life, like its contribution, or its date, it's simple things like that. So I think that's been helpful, is that I can understand what's happening. But we started off by doing the webinars and going through the webinars, and then we were able to have a live online training. And I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he was wonderful. But it was helpful because we were able to watch those video webinars, and I think then had some time, we had a week to do those before that we sent out to everyone. And then before we had the live training. And everybody
just kind of did those on their own time.
Everyone kind of did. I kind of had to, bug people like, have you done this? Like, no, you really need to do this. Like, and so I think we framed it as, this is your 101. We're going to have this live training. This live training is not 101. This is like 102. So come having watched those, because we're not going to start like, here's how you log in. Here is how you look someone up.
You need to know this already.
You need to know like a certain baseline. And so I think that was helpful. And we came with questions like, if there are things you can't figure out how to do just based on this that you need to do, come with those questions. So then we were able to walk through some really specific scenarios. And then we were able to kind of follow up with additional ones that we thought. And again, Amy and Amanda have been really great at finding answers to those questions. They're continue to be an incredible resource. Okay, I need this report. And even sometimes like, oh, we've never had someone who has to run that report. Like, we'll find it out. And usually like by the end of the day, we've got that answer. And again, kind of really laid out for us in like, okay, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, which has been really helpful. Not just like, oh, it's in there, it's a column you can add. It's like, here's how you add that column.
Actually do it.
Specifically called this, like, we're going to figure this out. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
So just in general, that was kind of your process. And, talking about, another question I get a lot is, what feature should I most focus on or whatever. And I find a lot of people when they go through this process, it's really easy to get caught up in what's exciting because this is new and we don't have this, or this seems really interesting. And people kind of forget, but the bread and butter, what I do 12,000 times a day is set up new forms or set up email or things like that. So my recommendation is always go back, look at your program, you know, especially if you're a fundraiser, where's most of your money coming from? Take care of that first, you know, kind of thing. But I just wonder what kind of you and your team's thoughts were when you were looking at digital features.
Yeah. So I'm, the main person doing that, but we do kind of farm some of that out occasionally to people. I think, for us, it was really on the digital side, it was easy, attractive forms and emails that we can make quickly. So, beforehand, we might have been spending like 2 days trying to make an email because, to make it look right, trying to edit things in HTML when none of us know HTML. So it was really like, what's going to cut that time down? What what is it going to look like? Does this seem easy? Can I just drag and drop things without, again, having to make tables or all these different things that
or cut and paste code that you don't know what it means.
Code that I've like Googled. So that was, I think, the priority there. And again, that really good integration with the rest of the system so that I could easily pull the lists that I need without having to jump around to many different places, that it was an easy find to find the people that I wanted to speak to.
Right. Yeah. So if I can ask you, so if you were easily taking 2 days to do an email before, about how long does it take you now?
Now probably what it should be, which is, maybe an hour.
Wow.
And I think that's mostly because I'm like a week into like our full implementation. Right. So it's still like learning a couple of things and making sure I have the right list. But the actual design of the email, I would say, is as long as I've got the content, it's so easy to plug in now, and it looks, I think, probably a lot better. And I think mostly for me and in this new experience is it looks the way it should when I tested. That a lot of it was in our old system, we were sort of having to fiddle with things, and then you'd save it and it didn't look like that anymore. And so trying to go back and forth. And yeah, just I think it was also, this process has been a good point for us to sort of look at what we're doing and what changes do we need to make, what best practices have we not kept up with. So I think we've been it was a good opportunity for us to just simplify our forms and our emails, and to really look at the design and see, like, how can we simplify them? How can we make them better? How can we make our forms easier and quicker? Like, what questions are we asking that we don't really need to ask, or what questions should we be asking that we're not, because it's actually more useful for us going forward. So that's also been, I think, a good like bonus of this experience is having to redesign those emails. I think has brought them maybe into 2018 a little bit. And really kind of made us think about our content too, not just the actual back end, not the design, but all of that goes into it. Right.
Well, and like you said, when you're saving a good chunk of time, you can think more about best practices or more segmentation or whatever's going to raise you more money.
Yeah, and again, I think that's another place where Amanda and Amy have been really great resources. Is like, here's what we know works for our clients, like sending examples and documentation, and like, think about this, not like, here's what you have to do, but just like, take a look at this and you'll think about that.
Yeah. And then similarly, so we talked a little bit about digital, but then on the development side, I do think that one way Every Action kind of stands apart from a lot of others in the market is that your online fundraising and your offline fundraising is all together. So in that capacity, kind of what were the features that you were excited about, knowing you haven't fully implemented development yet?
So I think just the fact that we were going to be able to see those side by side in real time is it going to be transformative, to be quite honest, and that everything is going to live in the same place. Again, we had 2 completely separate systems. So, my go-to example has always been, we have a very large donor whose, names is on buildings and things like that. In the online system, where I primarily was, he was listed as a non-donor because he only got our emails. And he didn't, he doesn't donate online. He doesn't donate $25 online to this campaign. He
buys a building.
He hands very large checks directly to our president. So that was that knowledge base that we just didn't have. So just having that all together side by side where we can all see that at all times is really, I think, is going to be transformative. I think the other thing for us is with our direct mail program. And currently in our previous system, a lot of those lists and things we couldn't actually pull ourselves. So we were having to go out to that vendor and make our requests. And so that was a lot of time because we weren't always first in the queue. And then if we had to then edit it, then that was a further process. So I think, again, it's just going to truncate some of these processes where we don't have to wait for someone else to do that. The person who's in charge of our appeals can go out, find the list, tweak it as she needs to, and pull that out. So I think it's just going to simplify a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and having all that data, because you have your online fundraising, your direct mail program, events, and a pretty big volunteer program. And so you want that full profile of what all your supporters are doing.
Right. Yeah, I think that, and we're also working with y'all here to try to figure out a good way. We have a very large in-kind donation program where people come and drop off clothing or items for our food pantry, and we've just never tracked that.
Oh, wow.
Because we haven't been able to figure out how. And so I think this is, again, that opportunity point where let's figure this out. If we're going to have all this other information, let's see if we can track this too. So I know that's something we're working through with Amy and Amanda, how do we do that? Because people just, they come up and they drop off shopping bags and I cleaned out my closet. Here is this. I mean, no, we're not going to track everything. What
not
can
kind of itemize
that? To know, is our board member also showing up every summer with 80 book bags full of supplies. We want to know that and be able to see that when we're calling them up because we're going to talk to them about the gala. We want to be able to thank people.
Plus, that's an important way of engaging too. Whatever they give you in cash, the fact that they come by a couple times a year and make other donations.
Yeah, and we know that they're engaged with us at that different level.
Yeah. A couple of things, and so you're just starting down this road. So kind of the question we were going to talk about is, what features are you looking for major gifts and planned giving? And I think I'll just jump in on this one and say the main thing is that you have some features to manage your major gifts and planned giving. You aren't running it in Excel, and that you can get that kind of 360 view.
Yeah, again, I think our team is excited to be able to track that in a way that's better than just notes on someone's profile, and having that moves management plan, I think will be really, again, transformative for how they do their work.
And I do think it saves a lot of time. Yeah. That's what we hear from clients. So, well, Kate, I think you did great with your process. I think we'll open it up to questions now, because especially if you are starting this process, Kate is a terrific resource here, and I'm sure there's some questions out there. So we have about a little over 10 minutes, and we'll just start going through questions. So our first question: what funding tips can you give us tech activists developing smarter ways to mobilize, organize, and peer bond? For a membership-driven nonprofit, can you suggest a CRM? Well, I will say the first answer to this. For a membership-driven nonprofit, I'd suggest you take a look at Every Action. I think we offer a lot of tools to manage that membership. I think the other thing that really that we offer to your question is, I think you can't underestimate that 360-degree view. You can really see all the different ways a supporter's interacting with you. I think that's how you really do that peer bonding. And kind of like you alluded to, there's this other data point of people who give in-kind gifts, and that means something different than someone who just does a credit card.
And one of the things I think as our digital marketing person at SUM that I'm excited about is that there are new and better ways now that we are with Every Action to kind of track where people are coming from through source codes and other things. So I can see now if someone has shared an email on Facebook or a form on Facebook, and we can then track where people are coming from that. So I think on that back end, that's going to be really helpful for us to see who's sharing what, and then we can kind of use that going forward.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Every Action offers with a membership-driven program is that ability to really track sources of members and new supporters. And, almost everybody tracks from the first gift on, but some people do put a lot of effort to get that first gift, whether it's Facebook ads or direct mail pieces or other things that are going out. And being able to track all that and the costs related to that, I think helps you make better decisions when you're growing your membership. Right, our next question. Were you looking for a CRM that would also accommodate grant syncing and stewardship processes? If so, what did you find in the way of helpful features and functionality with Every Action?
Yeah, so we are definitely looking to incorporate our grants program into this. They're kind of that team that I mentioned that was really just using Outlook and Excel. So I know they're really excited to have a more formalized process with that. And again, that comes back to those moves management plans where they can kind of track that and if not automate the process, but automate the tracking and, to get those alerts like, okay, the report is due or the testimonials, that sort of thing. And again, with stewardship, I think part of that is, again, just knowing what people how they're engaging with us so that we are thanking them for as much as possible and getting in touch with them in new and better and more personalized ways, that it's not just sort of a generic, hey, end of year, like we'd really like to thank you for being a part of our team, but being able to really personalize that and customize that to all the different ways people are engaging with us, because we just weren't able to see that before. And so now we can really customize those plans a lot better than we were ever able to.
Yeah. Next one, we have annual memberships that we have to track and send renewals every month. Does Every Action address this issue? Yes, I think we have, I'm biased about everything here, but I think we have a great renewal process. Whether you're doing it single channel, maybe you're just doing email, or you're doing multi-channel email and direct mail, we can help you set that up. So that however many notices you have, whether it's 1 or 3 or 6, you can set all those up. You set the criteria for what gets somebody into a renewal series, which is usually time from the last renewal gift and maybe amount. And then what gets them out of that series, which is usually they make a gift, and set up your emails. And as long as your creative doesn't change, you really don't have to do anything the whole year until you refresh that the next year. And even if, your creative does change, it takes you about 10 minutes to go in and update your copy, and then that can just run on its own. And there's a lot of other, probably for another webinar, but there's a number of processes that you can automate through Every Action. And again, another way to save time. And I think Kate's just starting to work with us on some of that automation right now.
Yeah, which we're really excited about. Again, there's the idea that we can free up some staff time to do more and better things is really exciting for us.
So that's good. I think that's it for questions. I think that's it. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the questions that folks submitted. A couple of things. These are what we always call the shameless plugs. I won't pretend otherwise. But one thing, you definitely can take a tour of Every Action and see what Kate was talking about and some of the features that I mentioned. You can take a tour yourself or request a demo if you want to go a little bit more in depth. And you just want to go to act.everyaction.com/get-a-demo. Also, you really should learn more about So Others Might Eat. They truly, I don't say this just because they're our client, but they're one of my favorite groups out there. And Kate, do you want to say anything more about some before we?
We're awesome. Yeah,
it's true.
Check us out. We would obviously love your support. So.
Yeah, they're a great organization. And last thing, coming soon, meaning later this week, we are going to put out a CRM shopping guide. So some of this information and a whole lot more information will be available. And especially if you are starting this process or in the middle of this process, make sure and check out the CRM shopping guide, because you'll get a lot of good information. And with that, I say thank you so much for your time. Have a terrific afternoon. Thank you. You were terrific.